Might want to pack some popcorn in your lunch this morning. There's new research that says eating more whole grains can help your brain as it ages. Aisha's at the First Alert Safety Desk.
Hey, good morning, Tammy. We've talked about how dementia and Alzheimer's affects millions of Americans, and finding ways to prevent both is a top priority for health officials these days. The new study I'm just learning about this morning, published in the journal Neurology, has found people who ate more whole grains were younger cognitively by about 8.5 years compared to people who ate smaller amounts of whole grains. And whole grains in this study, yes, popcorn, but they also looked at breads and cereals. Researchers followed over 3,000 people for about 6 years. The average age was 75, people who did not have dementia. This was done at Rush University in Chicago. About 60% of the participants were Black. Researchers had the participants complete a survey. They routinely did cognitive and memory tests on those participants. And what researchers found is whole grains help your brain the way they help your heart. Mayo Clinic says nutrient-dense foods like brown rice or popcorn have been linked to lower cholesterol and blood pressure. Also, the research is supported by the Alzheimer's Association and the National Institutes of Health. Make sure to have that study for you online at WBAY.com. Coming up in the next half hour, another health alert this morning. A new study talking about how eating too much ultra-processed food is linked to cancer. Tammy.
All right, Aisha.